Good morning. It's 8 o'clock and we will call this meeting to order. It's good to see everybody's partial face this morning at least. All board members are present. We have Scott Winch and Jennifer Vogler joining us by Zoom, along with our liaisons, Dr. Tim McGuine. We have Mike Thompson, John Ashley, and Nathan Delaney all joining us by Zoom. As a reminder, please keep your mics muted if you are joining us by Zoom. So at this time, I will turn it over to Dave for any agenda introductions or additions and deletions.
There are, you have properly identified our liaisons. The only thing I would add is that some of our staff who will be reporting today are going to be reporting from their office and workspace in order for us to have adequate spacing for the board to meet here. And so in their confined workspaces, they may not appear in masks and like the rest of us. But other than that, we have a box lunch ready for the board around a little after 11. And appreciate everybody traveling to be with us today. It's really good to see everyone back together here.
Thank you, Dave. Number two, we have the Board of Control Officers Reorganization. As you recall, we have a declaration from Willie Chambers to be president-elect. Are there any other nominations or declarations for president-elect? Any other nominations or declaration for president-elect? Hearing none, we'll call for a vote. All in favor of electing Willie Chambers as the president-elect, please say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same. Motion passes, I'm assuming 11.
Yes.
All right, now we have a treasurer. Any nominations or declaration for treasurer?
Thank you, Bobby. Goodbye.
Were you nominating somebody, Scott? Any nominations or declaration for treasurer? We have declaration for treasurer from Bernie Nicolay. Any other nominations or declarations for treasurer? Any other nominations or declarations? Hearing none, I'll call for a vote. All in favor of electing Bernie Nicolay as treasurer, please say aye. Aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion passes 11-0. Procedural approvals. Board of Control minutes. You have in your board packet the June 24th board meeting and the July 23rd board meeting minutes. Do I have a motion and a second?
I'll make the motion.
We have a motion by Dave Seebeck and a second by Mike Humke. Any questions or discussion? Hearing none. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? And motion passes 11-0. General fund financial statements for June and July. Dave?
Just a couple of quick remarks. The June and July financial statements will be the last financial statements that the board will review now until October, when we have completed our audit and make any corrections and adjustments as we go forward for September, August, September, and so on, that the auditors may point out. But as we take a quick look in wrapping up our year will reflect a deficit as a result of having lost our boys and girls state basketball championships, but it is also a little bit surprising, and we could be in far worse shape than we are. as a result of, pretty strong winter regional and sectional and a strong winter wrestling tournament. But right now, we are operating on reserves. And as I have shared financial information with all of you leading up to this, we are sitting in far better shape than many other state associations at this point in time. So if there's any questions, I'm happy to respond.
We have a motion and a second. Motion by Carl, second by Willie. Any questions and discussion? All in favor, say aye. Aye. All opposed? Motion passes 11-0. General fund payments for June and July. Cassie, are you with us?
I am. Can you hear me?
Yes, welcome.
Good. General fund payments for the months of June and July were for rule books, final payments for our virtual scholar athlete program, renewing our financial Skyward license, extra awards for the girls and boys basketball teams that either qualified for state or advanced to the sectional final games, insurance premiums for the 2021 school year, some legal fees, just wrapping up some cases that we had, 30-year awards for our officials, and otherwise operational as normal.
All right, do I have a motion and a second? Motion by Mike, second by Paul. Any questions for Cassie? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Hearing none, motion passes 11-0. Deferred liability fund, Dave.
The board has received an update of our deferred liability fund, and I want to thank and congratulate the board for having made a great decision last year in moving that monies into a more conservative account, which has largely been able to preserve that fund throughout the volatility of the marketplace, the pandemic-induced volatility. And so you have avoided a big downturn in that fund, and it's a good place for us to be right now.
All right, do we have a motion and a second? Motion by Phil, second by Mike. Any questions for Dave? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Motion passes 11-0. Audit commitment, Cassie.
Our audit for fiscal year 2020 will be conducted by the same company, BDO. They have an office located in Madison, and that's who we work directly with. And it will happen after Labor Day, approximately lasting 2 weeks, since we are going to do it virtually this year. So they will not be on site like they have many, many years in the past. But I should be able to provide them with any information that they need. So you will have the final audit report at your December board meeting.
Thank you. Have a motion and a second. Second by Carl, second by Mike Bigley. Any questions for Cassie? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Motion passes 11-0. Declaration of official depository.
We're recommending that the board approve use of BMO Harris Bank as our official WIAA depository. They have locations in all of our tournament venues, as well as locations close to our office for all of meeting all of our financial banking needs. We've been with them a number of years now, since M&I closed their doors, and asked that we be allowed to continue.
Motion and a second. Motion by Willie, second by Mike. Any questions for Dave on BMO Harris? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes 11-0. Conference realignment task, fast track proposal. Steph.
Good morning. At your June meeting, you made some changes to the conference realignment process, which included allowing fast track applications to come to you throughout the year and not just at that March board meeting. So you've got your first fast track application before you today. It's the Dodgeland Houstonburg Boys Soccer Co-op, and they have received unanimous support from both conferences. You'll see in your board materials an email dated June 7th from the Flyway Conference indicating full support, and an email on June 23rd from the Capitol Conference also indicating full support. So because there's 100% support of all schools involved in this realignment, it is considered a fast track application. It would begin the fall of 2021 for boys soccer, only for Houstonburg and Dodgeland. So we're asking for your approval on that.
Hey, do I have a motion and a second? Mike and Bernie. Do we have any questions for staff? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Motion passes 11-0. Conference realignment task force handbook. Dave, you want to lead us on that?
Outline a few items that are updated in there. Page 5, you'll see our updated flow chart that you approved in June. Page 6, the timeline has also been updated and already approved by the board in June. Page 7 and 8 of your handbook is an updated meeting schedule. We are able now, Appendix I, to include a sample application from last year. We included the Ashland application for reference, so you can see how an application has been completed. Appendix J is a designation of what the committee terms and duties are, including the WIAA staff liaison member, the co-chair roles, and also the task force committee member roles on that committee. And then letter K, or Appendix K, is now you'll see an established procedure for the task force for making changes to the overall process. So this is the time of year that we approve those handbooks, and with those changes, we're asking for your approval on that task force handbook.
Eric, if I may, I would just jump down to letter J and advise the board that other than those changes, there have only been a few additional clarifications of staff duties and assignments and responsibilities. But otherwise, that administrative handbook that each of you have been provided has otherwise been unchanged, and we would recommend your approval of that entire policies, procedures handbook once again for the coming year.
Okay, so we're looking for a motion and a second to approve both the administrative handbook and the conference realignment task force handbook. Motion by Phil, second by Mike Bigley. Any questions, or comments? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion passes 11-0. We have the 2020 Form 990 disclosure questionnaire.
Have each of you been able to complete that conflict of interest requirement and make sure that that is provided to Julie or myself? Does anyone have any questions about the questions and or your relationship in your role as a board member to the WIAA? Okay, good. Thank you.
We don't need a motion on that, do we?
No, that's required for a not-for-profit organization to complete that conflict of interest
Sounds good.
990.
All right. Coaches Advisory Committee appointments. Steph?
On letter K, you'll see 2 attachments. The first one is the appointments for the 2020-21 school year for all of our coaches advisory committees. Staff has recommended these personnel. The exception to that are football and track and field, who include their entire executive board as their coaches advisory committee. Sheila has secured administrative support from all school districts for these coaches serving on these committees for this school year. The second attachment is just for your awareness and archival history of the members on the Coaches Advisory Committee. So you can see those who have served at some point over the course of time. This is a term that expires in 3 years, and we would ask for your approval on those.
Okay, do I have a motion and a second? A motion from Dave, second by Willie. Any questions on the advisory committee? Hearing none, all in favor? All
Aye.
opposed? Passes 11-0. Conference realignment task force appointments.
And then these names that you see listed are our new appointments, including the additional position, the 17th person that you approved at your board meeting in June. So these people are all replacing either those who have retired, those who have completed their term, or those who now are on the Board of Control and are no longer eligible for the task force committee. So we'd ask for your approval for those new members.
We have a motion and a second. Carl, second by Mike. Any questions? None. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion passes 11-0. Media policy reference guide. Todd, are you with us?
Thank you, Eric. I'm over here.
There you
Yeah. As attached to your meeting agenda, the media policies and reference guide for 2020-21. The only changes as far as policy is concerned is as far as trying to avoid live interviews down on floor level during warm-ups and during the contest, which, bright lights affects play and warm-ups as well as it's a high traffic pattern. So we'll find alternate areas for live interviews during that time. So it also reflects the changes, obviously, in the dates. Thank you.
We have a motion and a second. Mike? Second by Willie. Any questions for Todd? All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Motion passes 11-0. Now our liaison, Rick Thompson with the DPI, are you with us? Mike, are you out there? How about John Ashley? We'll come back to you, Mike. John Ashley with WASD, are you with us?
I am with you. Good morning, everybody.
Good morning, John.
I really appreciate Dr. McGuine's comments, and I'm wondering, Dr. McGuine, would it be possible to access your PowerPoint? We have a COVID-19 website that we is available for our school board members, superintendents, et cetera, but there's some very good information. I don't know if you're comfortable sharing that, but just a thought that it's good research-based data that would, I think, help our members to understand the process that their districts are going through in making these decisions. So
absolutely, I'll be happy to help, whatever you
all
need.
right. Okay, great. But I really do think that the WIAA is indeed fortunate to benefit from your expertise on this. This has really been an education for me this morning, because I do believe that we have to recognize that the virus is at different levels around our state. So one size fits all is not going to work. And I also received this information from Dave. I guess it's the National Federation, but there's a lot of good information that's being provided through the WIAA. So thanks for sharing that. At the WSB, we've been helping sort of focus our members on reopening, and whether it's going to be in person, remote, or a hybrid. We know there are going to be regional differences, and as a result, it's going to look different depending on where in the state of Wisconsin your school district is located. But I think that makes it very difficult to have a consistent story for parents and for the communities. But I think that Dr. McGuine's emphasis on the value of athletics was very helpful. In terms of our legislative advocacy, I was hoping Mike would be on, because we need additional resources to be able to reopen our schools. If you just think about the cost of PPEs and transportation, if we don't get additional resources, I think that some of our less resourced school districts are going to be struggling. So one of the things that we're working with Mike Thompson and DPI is also around flexibility, also waivers for some of the regulations that make it difficult for our districts to, reopen. And we've been telling our school board members that they have a responsibility to communicate not only to the parents and the students, but the staff and the public about how they come to the decisions about reopening schools, along with our concern as a school board association that, as Dr. McGuine pointed out, there's going to be some risk. And so you should be talking, we want our board members to be talking to their insurance carriers and certainly their legal counsel, so that if you are making a decision, it's based on, making sure that it's something that your district is protected in terms of liability. And at the end of the day, I think all of our districts are going to have to be nimble, because there are going to be changes. It's unclear how this is going to pan out as the fall moves along. I did appreciate the talk about the importance of athletics for some of our students at risk, because at the WASB, and I want to acknowledge Mike Humpke and the board of directors, they created a racial justice and equity task force to focus us as a school board association about what can we do. We know there's been a lot of protests, and we may be at an inflection point in our country about addressing some of these issues that have been out there. But we do think school boards have a role to play in addressing issues of racial justice and equity. And so I just appreciate that the WSB Board of Directors has decided that that is something that they can get behind, and there's a lot of focus on that. We plan on having our regional meetings virtually, but we're crossing our fingers that we can still have an in-person state education conference in Milwaukee. So we'll see. That's all I have. Thanks.
Thank you, John. Any questions for John? Thanks again, John. Nathan Delaney with WIAA, are you with us?
I am. Good morning. Hopefully you can see our screen. Our organization has, since the last Board of Control meeting, we did survey our members. I'm going to go briefly through that, and that information was included in your board information yesterday afternoon. But 309 responses, which is very, very good. You can see the full, the offering, how schools are going to be going back to school, whether it's all virtual, hybrid, or full in person. And then you can see where people are at as far as current status of fall sports, whether if they're offering them. You can see that a lot of schools and districts are doing conference only competitions. That was a pretty overwhelming response. And you have some that have decided to wait past the initial dates that were set in the last Board of Control meeting. As we moved on, a couple things that are probably going to be relevant as we start talking later in this meeting about scheduling and how the year may look. There seems to be a majority of schools, depending on the schedule model, that would like to see contact days during the school year. I think as that conversation takes place, it's going to be really dependent on calendar model, season model, how many days or what time frame those contact days could be offered. But I think our membership is looking for more contact with kids, and it kind of dovetails off of Dr. McGuine's comments, trying to make sure we're making contact with kids because it's been quite some time. The graph on the bottom looks a little confusing. There's a lot of colors. So Jeremy Schlitz on our board worked hard to try to show the data with a weighted Likert scale. But this first graph that has all the 6 bars. If a season were to be suspended or canceled, we were just looking for our members' opinion on what constitutes a full season. And you can see from the graph and then the Likert scale that, basically between 50 and 75% of season dates, that would be considered a full season. I know that if you were to look at the maximum games limit retained across the school year, you see that has a heavy favor for their best option, but it also has the worst option. So that's why we went to this weighted scale, so you could kind of see the difference. And then our last question had to do with the WIAA tournament and any culminating events. You can kind of basically see the localized tournaments and regional bracket competition. That's where the majority of people fell. It wasn't necessarily the best or worst, but it was, the accumulation of the middle that helped swing those. So you can see that the regional bracket competition was preferred. And then just for all the math people, we made sure that we kind of showed how we got to our numbers. I think as we have further conversations today, I think just having another answer, I think that our members appreciated the special meeting in July, and I think some of are waiting to make another decision as they get ready to go into fall. And with that, if you have questions about the survey, I can answer those, and we'll see how the rest of the meeting goes.
Thank you, Nathan. Appreciate the survey. Any questions for Nathan about the survey? All right, thank you very much.
Eric, I would only add that over these past months and over the course of the summer, that the effort to help, the effort to contribute, the effort to participate on the part of WIAA leadership has been extraordinary and very much appreciated. So whatever questions we have brought to them through Mr. Shafransky, our staff liaison to WIAA, they have been eager to try to help and contribute, and for all of those efforts, we are grateful. Thank you, Nathan.
Thank you.
Thank you. Mike Thompson, were you able to join us?
Yes, I've been on the whole time. I was on mute talking for the last 15 minutes. No. First of all, good to see everybody back in the WIAA conference room. It's good to see just a little sense of normalcy, even though I feel like I'm talking to a convention of bank robbers the way you all got masked up there, but thanks for staying safe. Ditto to what John said about, we would be happy to link to any information that WIAA puts out, or their medical advisory team, around information that's helpful to school districts in making decisions, because I think the more that's out there that people, when they make the decisions, can lean back to, the better off we all are. So we'd be happy to do that as well. And I echoed John's concerns about the funding challenges schools are going to be under because of this continuing pandemic and the resources that they have to expend to keep their schools safe going forward. I will mention this. I've been on several meetings this week around this issue. I know the stress school districts are under in making this decision. I do know the stress. They're looking for guidance or something that they can utilize in their decision making, because it's very, as you all know, can be very political at the local level. And I just want to make it clear to folks what everybody's kind of waiting for from the Department of Health Services, because there's a lot of angst around some of the things that they've been working on, and they're anxious to get it. And there's 3 documents that people are anxiously waiting on, and these 3 documents are in the final stages. They have many people have seen different pieces of them, and I want to just talk about those 3 pieces. And one of those is the school outbreak guidance for local health departments. And this outbreak guidance is going to provide a decision framework for primarily local health departments to use with school districts into determining how and when to move through different learning designs, when to move from virtual back to in-person or blended learning. This what they're developing, that they have developed, is a framework that's supposed to be used in kind of a year, all year long, to assess the situation as it changes, depending on community spread and gating criteria. This is what everybody's anxious for this document to come out. It is not going to tell districts the plans that you've already made are wrong or right, for that matter. It's really to be ongoing practices. But I know there's a lot of angst out there. People are anxious to get that. They're anxious to have that document as some districts, as they finalize their decisions. The other document that districts are anxiously awaiting for is the instructions for isolation and quarantine of a close contact. And this is a critical document because it gives districts a picture of how long students or staff might need to stay home if they show symptoms or are identified as a close contact. It's also going to reinforce the definition of what a close contact is, and it's within 6 feet of a person who tested positive for COVID for more than 15 minutes in a total day. There's a lot of sense of urgency of those two documents. And the third document that I know WIAA has seen and we have seen, but it has not been released, is their youth sports guidance. And people are anxiously waiting to see that, because as they make their decisions, they want to be able to utilize something as a backdrop for those decisions. Those three documents over this last week have created a lot of sense of urgency by districts to be able to have those documents. I can tell you each one of those documents has been, is in the final stages, and they're kind of waiting approval. I have no idea. I had thought those documents would be out this week. I do not know when those documents will come out and in what shape, if they'll be different than what we have seen in the past on those documents. But those are what people are really waiting for. And every meeting I'm in, people are asking about those documents. I had thought those documents would be out this week. And so hopefully they'll come out soon next week. They're also, DHS is also developing, reworking some earlier face covering guidelines, one specifically for school administrators to utilize, and one for families around the whole face covering and actually the state directive that it's required. They are also in the process of developing contract tracing and monitoring expectations for schools. So schools can understand what's their responsibility in contract tracing. They're going to develop templates. They're in the process and press releases to send home notices for parents if in case there is an outbreak and someone has to turn to school. They're revising a screener. Should I send my child to school screener? That we already have one in our toolkit on our website, but they're redeveloping that. So there's some other things they're working on, but those three documents that they're working on that everybody thinks they're going to come out shortly are within kind of the realms of the decision makers and the secretary at the Department of Health Services. And those will have those three documents, primarily the youth sports document and the first document I talked about, which was the school outbreak guidance document, will have some implications and will be met with a lot of debate, as I think those will come out. The school outbreak guidance document for local public health is their effort to try to create some sense of consistency and uniformity about where districts are working with their local public health agencies, taken into consideration the various contexts of the spread of the disease in this state. So I know districts get frustrated with sometimes the differences in the guidance they're getting from local public health departments, or to the degree that they're getting it. And the Department of Health Services, while I don't anticipate them doing directives going forward, they have been getting, I think, a little bit stronger and more specific in their guidance to local public health agencies who are then working with school districts. So I don't think we're going to see directives. These are all guidance documents, but they're going to, I believe the ones, the pieces of ones I have seen, they're stronger in their recommendations as they come forward. So just want to let people know where those things are at, and I'll end there and see if there's any questions or anything.
Thank you, Mike. Any questions for Mike?
Mike, this is John Ashley. I just had one quick question because one of the things you're emphasizing is a level of consistency at the local health department level, that even though these are recommendations, they're going to look the same. So that, because you know what districts are running up against now. And so the hope is that I'm hearing from our members is that this guidance that will be coming out there'll be a level playing field in the sense that everyone is going to be using the same metrics.
Yeah, I think you're right, John. That's basically the idea. They're using the same metrics, even though their contexts are different, right?
Okay, thanks, Mike. And thanks, Mike. I don't know if people know just how crazy your schedule has been trying to work with all of these different agencies, but it's much appreciated.
Yeah,
Thanks.
like everybody, it's a difficult time for everybody. So appreciate everybody's efforts. Thanks, John.
Yes, thank you, Mike, and thank you, all our liaisons for taking the time to join us today. We appreciate your input. All right, with that, we'll move on to director and staff reports. Sponsorships, Todd.
In a typical year, this is the time of year that I'll be reporting renewing of contracts and confirming of contracts with state tournament partnerships. But based on the indecision that we have at this current time, taking a different approach, and I have reached out to each one of our corporate partners and given them an update of what we're talking about as far as what we're going to have in state tournaments and how the season will look. Obviously, there's that indecision. So starting to take another approach to this as well. I think it's this time it's essential to do that. I just had.
We can't hear you on Zoom, Todd.
Submitted a proposal that indicates the value of a sponsorship be shifted more towards the later part of the year to our winter and spring tournaments. And if in fact we don't have the traditional state tournaments in the fall, we can shift more of the value to the winter. So we'll be having those discussions, and I think it just is going to take a little bit longer to let the dust settle where it may. And at that point, my indications from most, if not all, the sponsors is a willingness to remain involved. So again, there's 2 additional sponsors that we continue to work with and have had conversations over the last 2 weeks as far as coming on board when we decide how it's going to look.
Thank you, Todd. Any questions for Todd? Technology, Eric.
Good morning. Just a few updates here for you this morning. We have finished work on the Games Wanted application that we discussed at our prior meetings. It does provide opportunities for schools to be able to enter in contests that they're either seeking or have that they're seeking participants for. We turned that on Monday morning. We have 26 contests right now. So I would anticipate there will be some growth in that as you move forward with your conversation this morning. We did meet with the WIAA leadership, obtain some additional feedback in combination with the NCA model that Kate was gracious enough to share with us. We have provided something for members to use that I'm hopeful will be taken advantage of. We've also been working with our school. It's been an ongoing situation with them in order to get officials information fed over through their API. They've made several modifications to those services, and I'm happy to report that as of yesterday, we have been sending officials data on a live basis within a few minutes of modifications in this office over to our school. So our member schools, as they are assigning officials, are able to use licensed information that is real time and accurate for them. So something that's been a long time coming and something that has been asked for us by member schools, conference commissioners, and the like for quite some time. We are going to be moving forward now on the schedule process in order to pull schedule data back from our school into our applications. The primary need for that is coming forward, a lot to do with seating. basketball seating is really the driving force in that right now. So as we move forward with winter sports and look towards the opportunities we had to provide electronic seating, that's going to become imperative. We have done some preliminary work in order to create some test models for the coaches committees to review, to look through and make determinations on how they want to proceed with the actual seating formulas. Just wanted to make mention of thanking Travis Wilson for his help in providing the information. We haven't been collecting regular season scores up to this point, so that data was crucial for the coaches' analysis and for the application that we're building right now. So that's where a vast majority of our time is starting to be spent at this point in time. In addition to form after form and request after request and modifications to our tournament applications as a result of the season models that are done today.
Thank you, Eric. Any questions for Eric? Megan with social media.
As you guys all are aware, after your last meeting in July, we launched the Team Up to Beat COVID campaign, and we've received a lot of positive response to that. We had WASB, WIAA, and WACPC, Cheer and Palms, all get on board, which was great. So we've integrated their logos into all of the sort of PSA type graphics to push out. We've also been getting some athlete statements and photos that I've been working on getting out. Some really great stuff, powerful statements, powerful images, and some great content coming from member schools as well. So I just wanted to share a few of those with you. There we go. On some of them here, we had Franklin just yesterday share some with their football team. A lot of schools posting things with masks. Here's some of the template that we had done with a statement from some schools and pushing those out. Some people putting masks on their mascots. Some really great content. So it's been good interaction, some great images. With Social Girls Volleyball has had some really awesome images with masks and social distancing through their practice or contact days this summer. So that's been a really, really great success. This week as well is National Travel and Tourism Week. And we recognize the struggle of a lot of our friends at our state tournament community CVBs. They do such a great job to provide a warm welcome to our teams, our staff, everybody's families that are traveling to watch the games. And a lot of them are helping with hotel assignments for some tournaments, and they really do a great job of promoting our events. So in support of them, yesterday, the entire staff at the WIAA office wore purple. And if you can see my screen here with the, we all wore purple and then sent this National Travel and Tourism Week sort of postcard via email to all of our CBB friends where we have state tournament events. So received some great messages back from them as well. And then on a more lighthearted note, last week, Todd and I completed the Got Milk Challenge. Our partners at Dairy Farmers of Wisconsin have some guidelines for a new campaign launching Got Milk again. And so you are supposed to do a trick with milk. And Todd completed a wonderful chocolate milk pour with just his foot, not a drop of spilled milk, even in dress shoes in the grass. So if you get a chance, head over to our Twitter, Facebook, or Instagram and check that out. It was pretty good. First attempt and not a drop of spilled milk. So.
Thank you, Megan. Any questions for Megan?
I just think that she does a great job. Thanks for including the WSB. And because more and more of our members are getting information through social media, you're just playing a pivotal role. So thank you for that.
No problem.
Absolutely agreed. Thank you, Megan. New AD workshop, Tom?
Thanks, Eric. As Dave mentioned, we've had a great collaborative relationship with WIAA that just seems to keep growing. As a matter of fact, kudos to Dave because WIAA started a weekly update that they're providing to all their members, and Dave has been gracious enough to be a message and information contributor with that, and that has had a lot of success as well. And in addition, the new AD workshop has always been a big hit, drawing this year, unfortunately, having to do that virtually because we just love having the ADs and school administrators come by the office and get a chance to meet, greet, and get to know everybody in our office. But doing that virtually this year, all of the new ADs, 80 were involved in that workshop back on July 20th. And all of our staff were presenters and did just a marvelous job. There was excellent feedback, very positive feedback as well. And in addition, then that was followed up with LTI courses the next day with WIAA. So a lot of education, training, and communication happening all the way around. We also followed it up yesterday morning with another Zoom meeting that was attended not only by almost all of the new ADs, but also numerous athletic directors with experience around the state. We had over 100 attending that meeting. It was very lively conversation, excellent work that was taking place all the way around. And so we've scheduled additional meetings. We've been doing this for the last 2 years. And so our next scheduled meeting will be Thursday, September 10th at 8:30. And we are planning monthly meetings to continue to just communicate, collaborate, and keep everyone informed as far as all of the changing elements that we're dealing with today in our athletic programs.
Thank you, Tom. Any questions for Tom? Competitive Equity Committee request. Dave?
As we were wrapping up our year in June with the advisory council prior to the June Board of Control meeting, there was a discussion and a request brought forward by several members of the advisory council who have asked that, the board establish an ad hoc committee, create an ad hoc committee and from a representative sample of school leaders in our membership to again investigate and explore options surrounding competitive equity based on data, based on member-driven information and amendment related to this topic. As our board will recall, as we were heading into working through our year a year ago, prior to the cancellation of our annual meeting, there was a proposal that was generated by petition that would have sought to address what some of our members view as an uneven playing field. And with that being tabled, and as the discussions around that expanded, there were concerns about the proposal as it was written, and so there was somewhat of a pause. But in that pause and in the absence of an annual meeting, there are segments within our membership that would like to make certain that the discussion of the conversation around competition, equity, and opportunity does not get lost. And so that request came forward from members of the advisory council, asking that an ad hoc committee be established to again review and take up the discussions and conversations around competition. And so I told them that that request would be advanced to the board at this meeting. And it is up to you now to offer a response.
Yes.
Just a question, maybe that's one debate. Is now really the time to be creating another committee? I look at this and say, I think the focus, whether I disagree or agree with the whole issue, I think there's a lot going on right now.
So I would look at it. I think there's plenty of work to be going around. I'd rather see this board and WIA focus on getting through COVID than worrying about competitive equity. Just
I think we would probably struggle to find people that have the time to commit to that topic. When we're talking about our administrators, I know from hearing from local administrators, they have enough on their plate right now to commit to that time thing. It is something that I don't think we want to lose sight of, but I would agree. I don't know if this is the right time. Any other questions or comments on thoughts?
I guess I'll speak up. I agree. Timing's not probably right now, but I would agree with your comment, Eric, that it's something we don't want to lose sight of, and maybe look at that committee in the future when we get through.
Turn it on.
When we get farther through this COVID-19 pandemic and maybe come closer to a resolution with this, that maybe we keep our eye on this this ad hoc committee and put it out there at that time. But I agree, right now is probably not the appropriate time to be putting more on people's plates.
Eric, along those same lines, and I agree with Willie as well. Do we tentatively set a time to just talk about this again? Do we look at this in March or something like that, just so we truly don't lose sight of it and address it at that point? Again, I'm like Phil, I'm not saying one way or the other at this point. I think we need to be able to show that we have addressed this. And if we don't put it on as a tentative timeline for us to at least talk about it, then, you know, and I don't know if March is right. I don't know whatever that time frame is, but I think we should at least put it on so it hits an agenda, even if we push it again.
Yeah, I was thinking the same thing, maybe April, May, something like that, after we get through the winter tournament series, if we have those or whatever.
So I'll make a motion to table this until May. And we'll have it on the May agenda.
I'll second that.
Okay, we have a motion. Put this on the May agenda in a second. Any other questions, comments? Hearing none, all in favor of moving this to the May agenda, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed?
Aye.
Motion passes 10-1. May agenda. Membership renewals.
Was he just late here?
Oh, Scott, you there?
Yeah,
Were you
Yep.
for or against that?
I was for that.
Oh, okay. Just came across late. All right, so it's 11-0. Thank you, Mike. Membership renewals, Dave.
In your packet, you see our projected 2021 membership in the WIAA. And we are projecting right now a membership with two new members, St. Augustine Prep and Milwaukee School of Excellence, to have our number of members to be 513 for this coming year as things stand right now. There are 66 members who have not yet turned in their membership application, and second reminders have been sent out that their student athletes are not covered by catastrophic insurance or concussion insurance. Their teams and programs are not eligible for participation in WIAA culminating events until they are members. And so you can see the history, you can see the middle level membership numbers over recent years. And if we look at 19 and 20 senior high membership, you see there were 34 not in a year ago at this time. It's easy to understand that that increased number of members who haven't been able to turn their attention around to resubmitting their membership application, but these are established members, and we do expect those other 66 to be responding just as quickly as they can. So that is the history of our membership, and as well as a projection for our membership going forward in the coming year.
Thank you.
Informational item.
Title IX related note.
Also in your materials is a statement, and the board has been made aware of the history of recent conversations surrounding some Department of Education regulation that has come out in May. And as a result of that Department of Ed regulation, it relates to Title IX. And that requirement now provides that schools must create a committee, review committee, when there are allegations of sexual assault or sexual harassment on school grounds, in school programs, for those things which schools are responsible for, those programs and opportunities that schools are responsible for. And with this new requirement, there is an expectation that the committee and review process would occur prior to a school being able to apply its code of conduct. And we have reviewed this with council, our own council, and friends of schools, and have determined on the advice of our council that a statement be added within our code of conduct language to clarify. A school is expected to apply their code when they believe it has been broken. But this Department of Ed Title IX regulation must supersede that application until such a time as that hearing has been able to have been held. And so on advice of council, you have the statement to be added to our handbook, our rules of eligibility in the area of code of conduct, and we will recommend that you approve and adopt that caveat and amendment to our rules of eligibility.
Are you looking for a motion right now?
Yes.
Motion by Mike, second by Mike. Any other questions? All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Passes 11-0.
Thank you.
COVID-19 Games Wanted webpage.
Tom, you want to talk a little bit?
I'd love to, Dave, but it's.
Other staff as might be appropriate.
I would, this was another Dave idea that we were able to make happen and launch this past Monday. It's an expanded Games Wanted for athletic directors during these COVID times, so that they have a user-friendly program and webpage that they can basically talk to one another with districts, with counties, however it needs to be placed out there, and help one another to find games that might become available. Eric's been masterful in putting this together quickly for everyone, and we've worked collaboratively again with the WIAA group. We call it a communications group that gets together when needed, and this was one of the ideas that Dave came through, and we've been able to make happen. So each sport is covered, school, conference, contest type. So if it's exhibition or regular season, if it's a county or a district, as I mentioned, and also start and end dates, because some of these programs are going to start at times and then be ending. So all of that's available. And with its launch this past week, we already have a number of entries that are taking place, and we know that in the week ahead, we're sure it's going to become extremely active. So a great idea, and something that Eric was really good at getting taken care of very quickly.
All the credit for this is due to the staff and Eric. The idea stems from the recognition that it is an unusual year. We anticipate numbers of members perhaps needing to hit a pause button. And if suddenly Whitehall finds themselves without an opponent for this week, well, they can get onto this website and say, we're searching, or see who else is looking that might be open and available. So just an enhancement of what we already had, but the ideas and contributions came entirely from staff and the technology support from Eric. So we hope it will be a helpful tool. And while we hope that nobody will have to cancel any games, if we must and if we need to look, then we hope that this will be a helpful tool for our members.
Thank you. Letters to state representatives.
Just want to quickly check. Ordinarily at this time of year, early in the year, for probably the last 10 years or so, stemming from concerns that we have heard from various legislators over time, that they many times are not familiar with the WIAA and how we function, how we operate, who we are, in fact. And so probably, as I said, quite a number of years now, each and every year, the Board of Control has sent out letters to the state representatives in your region, in your district, introducing yourself and offering a little bit of insight, but more than anything, offering a willingness to answer any questions that a legislator might have. We have also sent those same letters out to each school district administrator in your district, the district that you represent, or as might be the case with the private school membership or other liaisons that we have, and just an attempt of outreach. And we wanted to ask the board if they wanted to do that again this year, and not assume anything given the extraordinary nature of the year. And if you do, then we will begin working on putting those letters together for you, and look to have them available by September, October.
Yes.
Good idea. My local legislator actually asked me questions about what's going on, so I think it works out fine.
Okay.
I would agree.
Yeah, I agree as well. I think they're good. It's a good idea to get those out.
We will begin developing them. You have given me a clear consensus.
All right. As we get into COVID-related accommodations, we have a group of them, and the WIAA staff will go run through these all. We'll kind of treat this as a consent agenda. So we'll approve all of these at the end. If there's one that you'd like to pull out and separate, we can certainly do that. So as we go through them here, I'd like to just thank the WIAA staff for all their hard work. I'd like to thank this board for all the hard work, and all the administrators across the state. I think sometimes it might be the easier answer to go virtual or to not have fall sports, but I don't believe that's in the best interest of kids. And that's always been my driving force. And so I appreciate everybody's effort to try to make this as safe as possible and to try for kids. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Dave and staff here to kind of run us through these accommodations.
Thanks, Eric. And I will invite the staff to chime in and contribute if there's anything that I skim over too quickly. And by all means, if there is something that we need to pull out and respond to separately, happy to do that. In summary, all of these items that are in front of you are temporary and provisional one-year sort of adjustments and accommodations to various rules within our membership. Now, the board can't make a permanent change to any of these, but the Constitution does give you authority to provide temporary relief. And I will also state that this is probably not going to be the end of these ideas or adjustments that we will come to you and recommend. But these are what we have identified now. And I think just to begin and get them on the table, I'm going to go through them quickly, and staff invited, as I said, to add and contribute. You know, first off, if we go into some kind of a culminating event, and if we are able to provide awards, I think that we need to know right now that it is likely going to need to be different. We're not going to be draping awards if we get that far. Awards will be placed on table or kept in plastic and those sorts of things. We can stand back and applaud, but we're not going to be draping. We have heard concerns because of all of the uncertainty about sport officials and their requirement to get X number of games in each year in order to advance in their classifications. That is going to be scrapped for this year. No one will be diminished in their classification as a result of their ability to get and complete a schedule or not. They will have the same classification next year as they had last year. And so no official will be demoted. Scheduling relief. Within our Constitution, Article 6, Section 10, we have language that had been developed over time due to schools abandoning their conference. They didn't think they had opportunities to be successful, and so they would just walk out. And over time, the membership put in disincentives whereby if I left a conference with or without approval, there was going to have been a consequence. Our recommendation to the board, given the importance of regional competition, sometimes we have conferences that might be across 2, 3, or 4 different counties. And the impact is felt, for example, in and around Dane County, but some of members of those conferences in Dane County are outside of Dane County. And we are looking for an avenue whereby, with conference permission, a school could seek scheduling relief, could find games within another conference in order to provide opportunities for kids without the penalties that are associated with Article 6, Section 10, such as loss of tournament eligibility, loss of conference affiliation, and other disincentive penalties that are a part of that. We want schools to be able to schedule where and when they can, every chance they get. So we are recommending some relaxation of that provision for this year only. We are recommending that we consider the elimination of half bracket tournament planning. We believe that all of our tournaments ought to go back to the lowest common denominator. In football, that may be in groupings of 4. In all of our other sports that had gone to the sectional play, we recommend that we go back to that regional grouping and start from there. We don't know if we're going to be able to get much further than a regional opportunity for our members. And so if we have seating, that ought to be where we begin. Staff believes that we are able to work with identifying our pool of participating schools if we get a declaration from our members by September 1. Whether they are intending to go our traditional schedule of sport, or if they are looking at the alternative model, which the board will be discussing here shortly, or if they're going to ask to find a blended season. They want to go some of their sports in the traditional and some of their sports in the alternate season. We want to provide as much flexibility and option for all of our members in order that we see that they might be able to provide an opportunity for their student athletes. But we're asking that they might make that declaration for staff for our planning purposes by September 1. We've also had a conversation as a staff on what constitutes a season and how, again, with the focus being on the intention to provide opportunity and to extend opportunity, and yet not get into the arguments and distractions of, well, now someone has in reality had 2 complete seasons of a sport in a given year. And you saw the data from Mr. Delaney and the athletic director's survey. The staff recommendation would be that If a school has completed 50% of their season, X number of days throughout from start to finish, that if they have met that 50% of games, that would be identified as their season. With the exception of football, which we would recommend be prorated because of the small and limited number of contests in football. If I've got a football program and we get 2 or 3 games in and had to pull the plug and we're not able to resume, we would advise or recommend that that school might be able to come back in an alternative fall season if we're able to provide one, and complete the remainder of those 6 or 7 games that, you know, are going to be talked about. And so football would be prorated for the reasons I've outlined. All of our sports have a requirement of a minimum number of contests in order to be tournament eligible. Ordinarily, that number is generally a minimum of 4 games. You got to have at least 4 games to qualify for the tournaments. We're recommending that we eliminate that number, that minimum number of contests, whereby if we are able to have a culminating event and if you were able to get a team out there for 2 regular season games, that's an arbitrary number, but if you're able to get out there and if there is a couple more weeks of culminating events, we want you to be able to take part. So eliminate the minimum number of games requirement. Insofar as non-school competition, our rules currently provide and believe that an athlete owes the loyalty and allegiance to their school team. We have a provision in there whereby with school approval, a student athlete is able to take part in up to two non-school competitive events. And I think we're talking about making it an event, which might include a tournament or some such thing as opposed to simply 2 games. Is that where we ended up?
Yeah, currently volleyball, tennis, and wrestling are allowed invitationals. So Steph, were you still wanted that for all sports? So that would make it that if they're in a baseball tournament, they would have a tournament would count as one event.
One of the
If
events.
they're in a basketball tournament, it'd be one event.
And insofar as culminating events, given again the uncertainty of whether or not there will be tournament opportunities, we are asking the board to support the recommendation that the staff would identify what the tournament structure might be and might look like at around 30 days prior to the end of that season. When we get about a month away from the end, we will begin putting together more substance and structure. We're going to have regional championships. They're going to be at this and such venue and these sites and so on. But we're looking at about a 30-day from the end of the season window to be able to declare what the tournament schedule might look like, the culminating event might look like. As we have said all along, if we are able to do state championships, we are very eager and willing and would be happy to do that. I think the reality of this year is that we better get a little bit further along and a little bit closer to the end of any given season and then make that determination for planning purposes. Here's what it's going to look like. If we continue to use seating for our events, we recommend that there be no travel for in-person seed meetings, that all of our seating shall be done remotely, and the host will provide management and communication in order to allow that to happen, whether it's Zoom, whether it's conference call, whether it's fax or email. But no seating will be conducted in person. We will recommend and certainly recognize that since last year, schools have in some instances been planning and scheduling out of state travel or large events and so on. But we suggest that the board strongly discourage out-of-state travel and multi-school events. They might happen and they might be conducted with a degree of care and mitigation. But as an organization, we believe that out-of-state travel and multi-school events ought to be discouraged. We believe that COVID coaching contact days will be appropriate. In normal times, every school sport program, every coach has up to 5 unrestricted coaching contact days in the summer that they are able to use and interact with their student athletes and utilize school resources in order to do that. After considerable debate, we would recommend that for those coaches who have not been able to use their summer contact last year, this past summer, because of restrictions and shutdowns, if that coach was not able to use those 5 contact days, then we would recommend that coaches with consent of their own school's administration might have up to 5, might be able to use their 5 unrestricted days during the school year with consent of, their own school. We say that recognizing and understanding the impact, the tug of war that can occur between different coaches wanting different kids and so on. But as we have heard, there is value and importance on finding a way to have those coaches have some connections without going overboard and creating tug of wars that can do more harm than good. And so if a program has not utilized their 5 summer contact days, we would recommend they be able to carry those over and utilize them anytime up to the week prior to the start of their school season. We are recommending that if a school is able to schedule a competition, and so I take my team and we go to Dodgeville, and if coaches and administrators want to talk in advance and say, let's make the most out of this one-way trip. Let's conserve resources. Let's conserve and minimize travel and exposure and contacts. Let's take that game to its completion, and then let's play that extra quarter, that 5th quarter, those extra inning sorts of opportunities. We're there already for those reserve kids that might otherwise not have had a chance in the game. Not mandatory, but an option. The 5th quarter extra innings or periods to provide opportunity for those youngsters as long as we're there, and for the reasons I have explained and outlined. If we get into a culminating event cycle for a period of a couple of weeks or maybe more, again, to maximize the opportunity for contests, our current rules provide that once the tournament series has begun, in most instances, my ability to go out and schedule other contests is over. Once the tournament begins, regular season play is essentially terminated, with the exception of if we had a rain out and we had a game scheduled and we're able to make it up. The rules allow for that. What we're recommending is that if we have get into a culminating event cycle, that if I am now eliminated in that first round of play, along with a number of other schools, if I want to, I can seek out someone else and schedule another opportunity to play. The intention is certainly just to, again, create every possible opportunity for kids to get to play. No harm will be done by that. The other and last one that staff have identified at this point in time, we have labeled COVID co-ops. And we have heard from a few members. You all know the structure and requirements for forming a co-op, and there are 2-year agreement, and everybody agrees and those sorts of things. We are encountering, again, due to the uniqueness and regional specificity of this virus, that we may have a member who is a part of a co-op and the other school in their co-op, or a couple of the other schools in their co-op are maybe in a county that is shut down. Or maybe their school has decided to go all virtual or not allow. Anyway, there's a reason that we cannot get together and get our kids together. And I don't have enough numbers to field a team on my own. And so with this relief, this idea of relief for 1 year only, if I am not able to partner with my normal co-op partner, Eric, well, you know what? Wade is open and eligible for a co-op. And so for 1 year only, in order for our kids to get together, we're recommending kind of this sudden change, quick change, adaptability to create these opportunities for co-op teams. And so those are what we have identified to this point, that some might be used, none might be used, but we think that they might help, again, create every chance for a kid to play, a member to have an opportunity for their students that we've been able to identify to this point. Staff, please fill in the blanks.
Two things, on the last mention, letter O, I believe the deadline to apply would be the first day of that respective season, correct?
Yes.
Okay, and then also above on letter, let's see here, letter N, the one right above there, continuing games after elimination. Again, though, the game maximum would still be in place.
Yes.
This is just providing relief. The current rule says that only postponed games and canceled games can be played. This would allow them to seek out opponents until the last date of the season.
All right, thank you.
Would there be some allowance for sports that start on Monday?
For
co-op?
Oh, in this particular situation, we don't know of any current co-op situations that are unresolved at this moment, Bernie. I'm sure that we could talk about that if there was some decision made today and Monday is the start of the season. That's the question for us.
You know,
That's a possibility. Rules.
Yeah.
So
deciding on Monday whether they're going to work or not. For the co-op schools.
we will look at, Bernie, we will double check the language that we've put together. We want this to happen. And so don't worry about a deadline right now. If it becomes problematic, we will address it. But I would say if an opportunity presents itself for a temporary co-op to form, get it formed and you know, make it happen. That's the intention here. If I misspoke in any way, I apologize. Anything else to add on any of these other items?
Yeah, for officials, I would just like to add that not only does it pertain to those officials that can't meet the varsity game requirement, it also would pertain to those officials that are choosing not to license this year because of health issues they may have and the fear of COVID. So those officials would not drop next year when they renew their license as well.
Thank you, Joan.
Mm-hmm.
With respect to contact days, for those schools that don't have a choice because it's county enforced, or coaches that don't have a choice from their perspective, who can't start seasons until December, January, whatever options taken, is there some consideration for those coaches to have contact with those athletes because of those concepts that Dr. McLein mentioned, worrying about their mental health and continuing that contact?
You know, Willie, the coaches can always have organizational meetings and they can always have leadership gatherings as long as it's open to any and all. So they can do that now. They always have been able to do that. If you're asking, do they have X's and O's? At this time, we have not proposed that. But they can always get together with their kids and you know, how are you doing? And do leadership items as an organizational meeting. So that's something that we've encouraged them to do last spring for all coaches, whatever sport it was. It was just that we allowed coaching instruction during the spring for the spring coaches. So that would be an additional item if you wanted to go ahead and allow, say, a football coach who's going to be in the spring to do football contact days during the fall. Or if you want to have, coaches who have chosen to, or fall schools that are going to be in the spring, if you want them to have coaching instruction, that would have to be an additional proposal here. If that makes sense.
Other than those 5 days if they didn't use them.
If they didn't use them. But if you used them in July right now, then you would not have that option.
The key is the instruction, the coaching, and athlete player development. If we're talking about athlete well-being, I can always go up and put my arm around a kid and say, how you doing? You hanging in there? And those, and open gyms and weight rooms and those sorts of other opportunities. It's the specific in X's and O's fundamental instruction of sport, that we are mindful of, and certainly not every school will have the same experience, but in some schools, it will create a tug of war between our volleyball players and our basketball players, and our basketball players and our baseball players, or our football players, and so on. And so, by all means, if there is a better course and direction, or you all are in the schools. These are just our ideas.
Just thinking out loud.
Yeah, absolutely.
Any other questions for the staff on these accommodations?
Letter E, September 1, declaring traditional, alternative, or blended season. To me, it seems early to set that deadline. Where some schools or some districts may not have even started, or the games haven't even been played yet. I guess explanation on September 1 and possibly offer that later in September instead of the September 1 date.
I think the September 1 start date initially is for scheduling purposes. So if the schools declare September 1 that they're going to play fall football, or they're not, now I can go out and seek my opponents and schedule where they're going to be, or schedule their volleyball or golf meets. So it's not really to determine whether or not you're going to be permanently in the spring or in the fall. You may opt in September 1 and get on schedules, and then find out, hey, it's September 7th, we can't go. That doesn't mean that you don't have the opportunity to go to spring. It's just for scheduling purposes, Dave, more than anything. It's not a permanent thing, because that's why we have the prorated section too. You may find out that as the season's going along, we can't do this. And so then now you're going to shut down, you're going to collect the equipment. The kids are done with their sports specific, and you're going to go into the spring, and then you can do your spring season. That's the only purpose there. So, we understand that, but we want to be able to go ahead and schedule. Not everybody is declared. Dave has a survey for you, but it's 24 people who are still waiting today to determine whether or not they're going to go. That's just for scheduling purposes.
I guess my concern is that a school declares, and then you have an opportunity that, geez, things are going to be working out okay in the fall, and continue to play and have practices and whatnot. And then that next season, that may not occur either.
Mm-hmm.
That's the risk of declaring, right away. That's my concern.
I think our intent was to have that initial declaration so that we know who is trying to make a go of it this fall, to help us plan for what tournament series or culminating events may look like. And then to have a second declaration closer to the time where a tournament series would be occurring, so that we have a better indication of exactly who is still in. And as Wade mentioned, there's that second piece that if you have not been able to make it go and you're under that 50%, you have that option to move to an alternate spring.
And more so in our discussions, it's not about staff convenience. It's about, if you're looking for a game, who else is playing in the fall? Who else is who's going to be in the spring? So our members have an idea where to look in their region to maybe find games. It's not, it is as much for informational purposes to help the members as it is for anything that we need to do here, Dave.
Another one, non-school competitions. If a school moves from fall to a spring in the fall or fall in the spring situation. Those two events, that hasn't changed from our current guideline, our current rule.
It has not.
So that would remain the same.
Well, what has changed is the language was previous one game. And now we are proposing at least the opportunity for an event which may include multiple games. The staff did debate, well, should it be unlimited? Should it be school's choice, local decision on if you want to let the kid go and run and compete in unlimited numbers of events? And we debated that and ground it down and beat it up pretty well and kind of came back around to the loyalty and allegiance and the overuse and overexposure, and the adjustment that staff decided upon was the 2 event position. But board can certainly, these are recommendations, suggestions, accommodations to the best of our abilities to thrash out all of the pros and cons of all of those arguments, Dave.
So I see that in regards to if the school would move fall volleyball to the spring, where club volleyball is a large factor during that time. A girl who can afford club volleyball could play in 2 tournaments and still remain on her high school opportunity, and still put on that community uniform, but still also take care of her personal issue in regards to being in a club opportunity.
Yes.
Okay.
The same would be true for a softball player. If you adopt a calendar that pushes any of our spring sports slightly into the summertime and, a little bit further in June, it would allow a softball player to go play in 2 tournaments rather than just 2 games in softball
With school permission.
with school permission.
Any other questions on these accommodations?
Yeah, Dave, can I get a clarification on number K or letter K, out-of-state travel?
Your microphone.
Just want to get a clarification on letter K, or out-of-state travel. Does that include like the schools that are right on the border, Hurley, Superior, Marinette, that play a lot of games right across the line, or?
As we talked about those things, Carl, the answer is no, it would not. We recognize that we have a number of member schools who are on the border, whether it be with Michigan or Minnesota or Iowa or Illinois. And that is still, we consider that regional and, in bordering states, certainly, we get it and we understand it. And as we really tore into this whole conversation, we recognize that even though we go to this side of the road and now it's Minnesota, or this side of the road, I think of Hurley and you go under the bridge and now you're in Michigan. No, that's still the same region. When we get beyond bordering states, extended travel, going to a southern state for a spring, training event or something of that nature is more what we have in mind.
Just wanted to clarify.
Absolutely. But that's why we also use the language of discouraged. We're not saying you absolutely can't, but there is a membership interest. If I'm going to come and play you, where have you been, these past 2 weeks? Who have you been playing? And I have an interest in that, But we also recognize that in some instances, schools, parents, and athletes have invested money already that may be difficult to recoup. And so while it is discouraged, we are not suggesting at this time that as some states have, our membership would outright ban and prohibit out-of-state extended travel or those sorts of things. You know, and you may be able to bring a number of schools together for a cross-country meet or a volleyball meet. And you can get that done and mitigate exposure, but it will take added and extra steps and precautions. But anyway, that's why we chose the language of discouraged as opposed to prohibited.
Thank you.
Another one, just a question on letter M, the fifth quarter. Currently, I think there are non-varsity opportunities for fifth quarters and extra innings. And so this fifth quarter would be including varsity now at this time, extra innings now varsity wise, including the non-varsity level. Just wanted to- okay.
All right, can I get a motion?
I'll second.
Mike, motion and a second by Paul. Any other questions or discussion?
Are there any items you want to change, amend, or act on separately? These are just ideas, folks. Of course.
As we go through the season, there's chances that some of these you might have to modify as we go through them, correct?
As I said, Mike, I don't view anything as being set in concrete or stone right now, because next week it'll change. And I don't consider these to be an exhaustive list. The staff is every day coming across things and sharing ideas, and what can we do to maybe find a way to give a kid a chance or a school a chance. So we may modify and we may add or change as we move along and discover. You know, Coach McLean always said it's abuse that leads to restriction. And so if we discover abuse or hear concerns of abuse, then we'll come back to you and say, you know, that wasn't such a good idea. But right now, as a launch point, we think these are good recommendations to give a chance.
All right, we have a motion on the table and a second to approve all of these.
Eric, this is Nathan. I just have one question before you take a vote on why would we not offer the contact days to everybody during the school year? Wade and Dave, I have, if it's about connection, depending on what season everyone chooses, it seems to me that a school that was able to do something in the summer shouldn't be penalized during the school year if they have to have a season that's particularly later. And I think that was Willie's point. I couldn't hear it clearly, but I just think that if we're going to offer contact days during the school year, that should be open to everybody.
Well, the thought, Nathan, first is that our rules are not punishments. They never have been. They're restrictions, and they're there to keep everything on a level playing field. So the thought here on a level playing field is if somebody was able to have their contact days during July and somebody was not, that those that were not would be able to have the same amount of contact days as the person who did have their contact days during July. So it was just a level playing field rule and decision to try to go ahead and give people the equal opportunities that they did not have access to in July. So that's the main purpose of the way we were thinking. We weren't thinking that if we gave someone who had 5 days in July, another 5 in September, then they would have 10 total. And now we would get into that argument. So that's the only reason for that.
No, I understand that part. I just think that if people are going to now have to move their seasons to the spring, and it's all dependent on the next conversation. I just don't know that you can make that decision ahead of knowing what the calendar kind of looks like. That would be my only real point.
Again, like with any of these, Dave said we can always make adjustments if we find that there is a need for that. So currently we do have a motion on the table and a second to approve them as is. And if we find that there needs to be a better way, we'll readdress that. So any last questions? All right, not hearing any, call for a vote. All in favor, signify by saying aye.
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 All opposed? These pass 11-0. We have the return to fall sports guidelines. Wade, you want to take the lead on this?
And if you click on the link there, you will see the document that was put together. Actually, it was finalized yesterday at about 10 o'clock, 11 o'clock. For the last several weeks, our doctors have been working on the first section and first portion of this document. And our staff has been working on their sports-specific information for several weeks. And everybody has done a very good, outstanding job. And I think that we've come forward with another document that will be very useful. A couple of the key points is that we do not recognize or do not classify anything in risk levels any longer. The limitations in here will be by your gathering limitations within your county and consulting with your county health department. So there was some confusion there when our risk levels were supposed to be determined by the gathering levels, but some health departments were just using their classifications of their county as the level for restriction of the schools. So it does start out with the COVID basics. An important part here that Mike talked about with the DPI and that is as well is what to do if an athlete is sick or exposed. This is quite detailed. The doctors did get this from their infectious disease departments and put it together. It is very strict when you get into a student who has had exposure to someone who has had a positive test. And that I would urge you to take a look at that information when you do have some time. The general consideration for practices is updated. We'd still recommend that you have a COVID coach and you do your social distancing and mask up during practices and so forth and so on. And then we have the general considerations for events. Again, it comes down to essential personnel and who should be on the field and who should be on the sidelines and where they should be. When you go down further after that, we do have a medical clearance form for the doctors to use. If a student needs to be removed from practice because of COVID for some reason, they have to be put back in by the doctor. So this is a form. It contains that information. Again, what if a student is sick or exposed for the physician to go through, then they will sign off at the bottom piece. Notice it's a MD, DO, AP, NP, or a PA that is allowed to do that. And then you'll see the sport-specific guidelines. So each of the sport directors put their guidelines together, and the doctors did review them, update them, and they did try to go ahead and make them consistent. So as you go through there, you'll see all of the rule adjustments from the NFHS and the suggestions from the various sport directors that the doctors did. So we would ask for your approval for those guidelines so we can send them out. Once approved, we'll send them to all of the superintendents, principals, and athletic directors this morning, and they will be posted on our website. They will replace the summer contact guidelines. Our summer contact is over, so those will be removed, and then these would be posted out there.
Motion by Mike and a second by Mike. Any questions, comments on the guidelines? Dave?
Can we just talk just about the process of how this came about? I mean, we're close to the season starting and here it's coming out and we've had things from other states, but just the process and some of the issues maybe that came about to get it out to this point. And
Well, as soon as we were able to post the summer contact and the summer sports specific stuff, which came out, in July, right around June, July 1, Dr. Walters started working on contacting his people and the sport medical advisory to go ahead and get their input on what needed to change and what not. The difficult piece is as soon as July came around, the clinics started opening up too. So with the general guidelines, it took a little while for those people to be working their full clinic and then also creating a document for us to use. We also had information from the NFHS that we incorporated into our items. So I don't believe my football stuff came out until middle of July, late July. So we're still on track with that. It just took a while to get the stuff together. The last 2 weeks have been really pushing hard with Dr. Walter. And I know he spent quite a bit of time this week or last week getting those together because I think he got them to the physicians on the sport medical last week, Wednesday or Thursday. So they had to work on them over the weekend, and then we were able to compile them on Monday and Tuesday with my assistant Heidi, who put them together And then, as I said, well, I think he got the last one, volleyball and golf, to us yesterday morning, I think. So it's been pushing time, trying to get all that done at one time.
Any other questions? Hearing none, I'll call for a vote. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion passes 11-0. We have the alternative seasons models, season adjustments, calendars. Steph, you want to take the lead on this?
I can do that. We've shared these with you in advance of this meeting. We're going to look at several different options that our staff has worked on to put together. Few things I'd like to just note: that when you see Ps on the calendar, those are required practice weeks. X's refer to weeks that you can have competitions. And then T is a traditional tournament series that we've kind of rolled over in most of these. However, please know that those T's certainly will have flexibility as our conversations go on, and we seek input from coaches associations and schools as well. So I'll just take these in order of the ones that you see on your agenda. The first one is called alternate fall option with spring and winter reduced. So as you look at this, you see the current fall that we've got going on. Let me get this shifted around here so I can get it out of the way. Way to minimize that. Okay. So looking at the screen here, we've got in blue, you see in green, you see our current delayed shortened fall season. Moving on, you see a winter that we have modified by removing 3 weeks of the season. So you'll see the same start date, but a bit of an earlier end date to that season. That allows for a placement of an alternate fall season. We try to stagger those alternate fall seasons to minimize the amount of overlap of shared athletes as possible. Pull those things up a little further into winter that we could play indoors. And some of those things that are outside, pushed them down a little further. And then you'll see a slightly modified spring season. It's approximately 2 weeks shorter, ending the last week of June, with culminating events that week leading into the 4th of July, but culminating again that last week of June. So again, we're calling this the alt fall option with spring and winter reduced. Some highlights of this one, some things to note, is that there would be one culminating event for winter and one culminating event for spring. All member schools would be involved in those culminating events if they're able to. Fall would be the only one that has that second culminating event season. All right, moving on. Next on your calendar, I think you've got the WIAA alternate 10 weeks is what's next on your agenda. So let's look at that next. Again, you see our current fall in green. Moving down, you see a 10-week winter season. That second fall season, again with some staggering. And then a 10-week spring season culminating the final week of June. We did put a yellow bar next to these. This is assuming that the traditional winter and the traditional spring seasons would still be conducted. That shows you the start of the winter running alongside of the amended winter. And then it shows the traditional spring running alongside the alternate fall and that amended spring. So some highlights of this one, again, double culminating events in winter and spring. There's a pretty significant overlap of some fall, alt fall with some spring sports for those schools that would have to go that route. Moving on, let's talk about the second semester 8-week plan. This one shows everything happening in the second semester. Each season is 8 weeks long. And I say second semester, first of the year, starting the week of January 4th. assuming that the traditional seasons would still be conducted, that's a yellow bar shown alongside of those. So you can see the traditional winter running alongside what a shortened 8-week winter would look like. Then that alternate fall, that's 8 weeks. And then the far right-hand column shows that yellow bar of a traditional spring season running alongside of those. There's minimal overlap with this model. Again, the seasons are shortened to 8 weeks. The next one look at is the second semester 10-week model. Very similar. It's starting in that first week of January. The big difference here is that that one will run through the month of July because of the 10 weeks in each season, with all spring sports culminating in that alternate spring at the end of July. We again showed the yellow bar alongside so you can get an indication if there is 2 seasons running, if we're still running a traditional calendar alongside of those, that's what those culminating events would look like, and those seasons would look next to that. The next schedule is the Southwest proposal we received in our office, and that one shows the winter season beginning mid-December, the alternate fall beginning first, second week of March, the spring season beginning in mid to late April, culminating the final week of July. And again, remember, as we said when we started here, that all those T's show traditional tournament series, but remember that can all be changed and that's flexible. And then the final schedule that we want you to look at is called winter, spring, fall. In this one, we tried as a staff to come up with a plan to help alleviate the shift of the entire spring later. We tried to instead have the fall shifted a little bit more than the spring. It was very difficult to do because of the weather in Wisconsin, in particular in northern Wisconsin. So again, you see on the far left, our current alternate fall. You see the winter season beginning around Thanksgiving. We really did some staggering of this alternate fall. You see girls and boys volleyball and girls swim pulled way up beginning February 1st and culminating by the week of April 5th, with those other spring sports that are outdoors having to start just a little bit later. But then if you look at the spring on the far right, the only spring sport to end that last week of June was baseball, with some of our fall sports ending in mid-July. And if I just go to the top again, I think that was boys soccer, boys and girls cross country, ending that final week of July. Those are the calendars that we've put together. We tried to look at every concern, every option. We've shared with the board specifically the pros and cons from our staff. We know that none of these will be ideal, but wanted you to have a lot of things to talk about today.
As you can see, we wanted the board to recognize that staff heard the concerns that were shared at the end of July. You know, consider the overlap, consider the run-on, consider the conflicts in some schools where kids are multi-sport athletes and those sorts of things. Recognize the fact that the more we go into July, the more we intrude upon other programs, and we have heard many fears expressed by some members, some coaches, many parents, some athletes that don't forget the spring sport athletes have already, you know, been deprived of one season and now pushing them into summer, where now they're forced to choose between their other summer programs and opportunities or summer jobs and family plans and so on. So the staff has worked every day to develop ideas and models and options. I can tell you that as we begin to try to look most realistically at what is possible, what is really and actually doable, so that I don't have staff trying to run a track meet here and then a soccer event and another track meet over there because of, two different spring seasons, a traditional and alternate and so on. The availability of facilities. We have finite resources, both in terms of staff and in terms of venues. And we don't really know what the venue availability might look like as we get further down the road. As staff has deconstructed all of these things, our opinion is that the very first model that you looked at, that alternate fall option with spring, winter, reduced, whatever, is likely the most doable, most feasible course of direction. And what we're doing in that is, in effect, running our winter and spring seasons within their somewhat reduced but more normal calendar schedule. And if a member is not starting until second semester, well, then you join into the basketball season where and when you can, and then finish the ride through the rest of that. For reasons of diminishing overlap, for reasons of not intruding into the summer, for reasons of not 2 times dinging the spring sport athletes, that alternate proposal is the one that after staff has deconstructed and vetted, continues to rise to the top for us. But as you can see, we have tried to give you every idea that we could imagine and put on paper. Staff was phenomenal in terms of the time and energy that they put into it. So, questions?
Dave, do we have a lot of schools that are looking to push all of their fall sports to the spring, or are they just looking at those high risks, football and volleyball, soccer? Do we know?
I don't.
Without the declaration, we don't know yet.
Yeah, that would, we did conduct that very simple and one question survey, in recent days, and I think it was, what is the numbers?
121 yes, 33 no, and 25 waitings so far.
That was as of this morning.
The-
Eric, does Nathan have that on his
Yes.
survey? With
Yes.
Is that, Nathan, do you have that information?
We can't hear you when you're talking, so if you can move those microphones closer, that would be fantastic and help all of us participating here. Thank you.
Nathan, do you have that information that Eric is asking for?
Say that one more time.
On the first page of the survey.
First one, current status of fall sports, all sports postponed for fall, 11%, 34 schools.
Nathan, what's the exact number of schools from your survey who plan on offering fall sports this fall?
Looks like 255. The 255 for
This fall, yeah, was 234, starting on low risk, 255, yes.
Half.
Total 309 responses.
But only 34, okay, it's postponed all, because that is an option with that plan, correct? That they could just move football or just move.
Yes.
Dave, so you're suggesting, or from staff work through that the first one listed, alt fall options, spring winter, is the most doable plan in terms of impacts and providing flexibility for everyone? That's what the staff is not stopping just short of recommending, but telling us that is the most workable and doable?
Yes.
Spring, winter, reduced, right? That one. Yes, the very first one was. Yeah. I like the plan myself, and coaches that have talked to me have stated that
It's turned on. All right. The coaches that have talked to me have stated they like this plan, and it does give them the option, if they're not comfortable with fall, they can take it to spring. They appreciate the work that's went into this. And I myself, it's nice to see the different options that the staff has gone into. I can only imagine the water cooler talk that has gone on with this. So it's nice to see those options, but this first plan is the one that, as we presented this back in July, this is the plan that I think most ADs and coaches are interested in.
With the alt fall option, the season is reduced. Are the contests reduced mandatorily, or will that just be a byproduct of that most likely?
We didn't talk about limiting the contest, but yeah, we didn't talk about limiting the contest because we feel that schools are, even though that's what it looks like on paper, it's probably not going to look like that for individual schools. You could be playing 2 weeks and then have to take a quarantine time and shut down and come back. Realistically, the number of games allowed may not be really reached by anyone, realistically. Yeah, we didn't talk about reducing the number.
Bernie, about the only sport that has limits on numbers of contests per week is football primarily. And for virtually all of our other sports, it's a matter of scheduling and making it fit, and whether it's volleyball or track meets or softball and baseball. Baseball has the pitching rule that you want to navigate around, but we did not address limiting or changing the number of available games. We think that the schedule will probably do that limiting itself.
Any other questions?
Eric, I just one quick question, but maybe for folks from the Southwest area. This was pretty passionate in terms of the Southwest proposal. Does this really or Bernie, does this blend the two together pretty well and create a scenario that you think is workable?
From my perspective, I think it does address what the Southwest plan was looking at least in theory. And it prevents, I think, a lot of athletes from having to make choices between sports, which I think is key for at least smaller schools anyway.
I'm going to underscore again the probably the most resounding communication that has come to staff have been about, we're going to wipe out a youth baseball league in the whole Southwest part of the state if we go into July. Now, others will say that, our kids will choose and they will do these things, but, those programs are important in your communities every bit as much as the school programs are important to our membership. And so, this is an attempt to try to not dismiss any of the concerns that we have heard and find the best avenue forward, the best possibility moving forward.
I agree with what Willie said. I think
I would agree also, Mike, because I'm from Dodgeville, and I think this program, this model definitely follows that Southwest proposal that was put forward.
Eric, I would move the approval of the alternate fall option, spring, winter reduced plan.
I would second.
We have a motion by Mike, a second by Mike. Any other questions or comments?
I just want to clarify that what we're talking about now is that alternative plan that the board directed staff to take up on July 23rd. This does not change or affect the fact that our fall sports seasons are going as you determined, August 17, I believe, for those that are able, and then a September 7th start date for football in those schools that are able to do that. This does not change that, does not affect that whatsoever. We are talking about that alternative plan for those members who are closed down until mid-year. Correct?
Correct.
All right.
Any other questions or comments?
Eric, just one quick question. So if this is approved, then the staff will go to work and identify the culminating event week, which could alter schedules, correct? Which could alter the length in the same window. Wade, correct me if I'm wrong. If your culminating
Change the
event
tees.
is only 1 to 2
So the
weeks,
weeks of competition versus tournament levels, is that what you're asking, Nathan?
yes. Because if there's only 1 week of a tournament for a T, then that's one more week of actual competition that you can.
Correct. That's
that
what we
people need
talked
to
about.
hear.
We talked about the calendar. The end date is the key piece, and that those final weeks of the season would be clarified by staff, working with coaches associations and schools to define what those ending weeks would look like, whether they be tournament series or regular season competitions.
Right, and you'll notice, in football, in the fall, there's 2 culminating weeks that would probably be some crossover events. But in the spring, that's a 7-game season. And that's it. There is no culminating event in football in there. But in baseball, you'll see that we do still have several weeks that we will be able to go ahead and have culminating events. And that would be, when you're looking at those weeks, that would be a full baseball tournament if we were able to do so in June. And if we're unable to do those tournaments in June, then those would be weeks that they could schedule competitions within their maximums. So that's kind of the idea of where we're at is those T's may turn into X's if we don't have time. So if you have to delay your season for 2 weeks, you may replace those T's with X's. That's just the end date is the key date. It's to allow flexibility is what we're doing there.
No, I appreciate that. And thanks for the clarification, because that's what people on my end are going to want to know so that they can get to the scheduling piece.
Stephanie, will you throw that calendar up there again? Just go through it one more time for us.
Will do.
I would point out that we may have some members who, for a variety of reasons, we're making no assumptions that all members are going to want to participate in a culminating event if there is one. And so we may want to say, we're going to get a few extra games here in our region, and we are not interested this year in moving beyond that. So the intention is for some flexibility.
So again, keeping in mind, P indicates practice, X indicates allowed competitions, and T indicates a tentative tournament structure. So the green in the far left shows the current fall season in its amended form already that you approved last month. Starting next to that, beginning with practices the week of November 16th is an abbreviated winter season, which is shortened by approximately 3 weeks, depending upon this on the sport. Culminating events, the final winter tournament would end on March 1st, or the end of the final season, March 1st. And that looks like that is boys basketball. The first alternate sport would be girls swim and dive, beginning the week of February 8th, with girls and boys volleyball being the next to start the week of February 22nd. Then you can see March 8th, we've got football and girls tennis. We've got boys and girls cross country starting on the week of March 15th. And then March 22nd, that week, it would be boys soccer beginning. As we move down on this calendar, here's our amended spring season, shortened by approximately 2 weeks, give or take, was for each sport. You look at the week totals above. And there is definitely overlap with that alternate for fall season, as there was in just about every one of the plans we presented today. So for those schools that do opt to go with that alternate fall season, they're going to see some overlap with their spring sport athletes. And then we've got 4 of our sports: track, softball, baseball, and girls soccer culminating the week of June 28th, with girls golf finishing up the week of June 14th and girls tennis finishing the week of June 21st. Anything else you wanted to see on this calendar?
Stephanie, this is Nathan again. This would be the calendar. The traditional calendar would be replaced with this one.
Yes, correct. The traditional winter and the traditional spring calendars would be replaced with what you see here.
Any other questions?
If schools do not want to participate in this new alternate season plan, what's the visual then for those school districts?
This is the new.
Okay, just want to make sure, okay.
So these are the new season start and end dates. The ones that we've used in the past are not effective if this passes. And then next year, we would go back to our regular schedule, our regular, calendars,
Hopefully.
hopefully. I'm optimistic, but this is just for this year, this school year, new start and stop dates.
One question, students can participate then in the 2 sports, say you're in football and you're also track and field, you can do both. Just wanted to clarify.
That's a local decision.
Yep.
WIAA does not prohibit multi-sport participation in the same season.
And that was our goal in trying to end those fall sports where they are, so any overlap, the students still can participate in those spring sports.
Okay, thanks.
Any other questions?
Just one final reminder, that will be huge to be able to clearly tell all schools that winter and spring are modified. I think it'll just eliminate that, even the questions that are here. I think we just need to be absolutely crystal clear as soon as this comes out that winter and spring are modified. I can just see the questions coming.
Yep, I think Steph has identified in that box on the side, a couple of, about 2-3 weeks in winter and a couple weeks in spring, if in that yellow box right there.
I agree. I can imagine the questions that will come. So just wanted to make sure everybody sees that.
Any other questions? All right, hearing none, I'll call for a vote. All in favor of this alternate all option, the spring and winter reduced, please signify by saying aye.
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 All opposed? Motion passes 11-0.
Yeah. Thank you, everybody.
We know you've got a lot more work to do as far as looking at venues and things like that, but it's a step. It's a starting point that everybody needed.
Yep, go ahead.
All right, at this time, we'll take a quick 10-minute recess here and come back and finish up. Take a quick break. So, thank you, everyone.